In regards to restaurants that focus on locavores, that seems to be a new buzzword, and a growing trend in the Twin Cities, how do you think that benefits local customers?
I think there's a huge piece of it that helps build people's pride in our local community. I also believe that obviously when you support local businesses, you're helping your community stay strong, and if you're supporting local farms, then they're putting their money back into the community. So there's a big piece of that. I also think that Minnesota happens to have a little bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to the coast, and we're always measuring ourselves against what are they doing in New York and what are they doing in LA or whatever.
Right.
And I think we have a really unique place right now where we actually are sort of very trendy. We are sort of the trend that the coasts are looking at. I've said this before that they're doing canning parties, and they talk about pies and all that stuff, and that sort of thing. That's kind of just part of our culture. The state fair thing is part of who we are, and they have state fair parties in New York. You know what I mean? So I think the whole farm thing and the farm movement is awesome, and it sort of makes us feel. It should make us feel proud, but it should also sort of give us the sense in my mind that we're just fine, and we can continue to grow from here in a way that's unique and special. We don't have to compare ourselves to the coast.
All right, and then writing obviously is one of the things you do, but you're also on TV and radio that makes you more of a public person. Anything that you had to really overcome in being able to do that?
Am I afraid in front of cameras?
Yes.
No. I don't really know why I'm a ham and that I have no problem in front of cameras or being on TV and talking. It's just sort of, it's a gift and a curse.
Anything different between TV or radio for you as far as your nerves being different from one or the other?
No.
No?
I will say this. It was harder in the radio life to hear myself. When I first started, we would get the recordings, and I would listen to myself, and it would just be, because I was forcing, I was trying to be something, and I think now I've learned how to just be a little bit more natural and just let it flow. As far as TV goes, it's almost, when you do something on TV, you normally have about 3 minutes, honestly, and so it's like you just go and you just put it out there, and then it's gone, and there's not much you can do about it anyway. If you sort of hold to that freedom, I think you're okay.
Well, and on television too, you have the benefit, if you want to call it that, of working with someone as opposed to like presenting the news where you're just looking at the camera directly.
Right. No, there is that truth, and that can be a good and a bad thing too, because like for instance, we did my radio co-host and I did a challenge about 5-minute meals, and we've talked about this.
Yeah.
But so they gave us 5 minutes to cook something, and we decided to cook mussels, which you absolutely can cook in 5 minutes.
Right.
But not when they're talking to you about, the status of the kitchen, and they want to chat about other things. And so it's a harder game when you have somebody else direct it. And I will say there are certain TV co-hosts who certain, presenters who sort of ask the wrong question or ask outside of what you think you're going to be talking about.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden you have to sort of change your focus. But again, if you have any sort of nimble, agility, I think you can make it work.
Another question for you, Stephanie. I've heard words recently from you like butterlicious.
Tiki-licious?
Tiki-licious.
Yeah.
Are coming up with words, is that something that, have you always been that kind of individual who just, if I can't find a word, I'll just make up one that fits?
I used to say when I graduated from college with my English degree, I said that was the license that I needed to actually make up my own language. So
okay.
That's sort of, and I'm not all Rachel Ray with the EVU and everything else. It's just sort of like, it's really hard to be. That's actually one of the top questions I think we get as food writers is how can you keep coming up with words to describe food?
Instead of saying good, fine, delicious, wonderful.
And so it is a challenge, but I also think for me personally, I know there's food writers out there who get extremely flowery with language, and I try not to get I try to put in a couple things that maybe make your head like turn a little bit to think and see food a little bit differently, but I definitely want you to understand what's on the plate, and I definitely don't want to paint something in flowery language just for my own sake, and then you go to the restaurant and it's just a salad.
Right.
that I think is a disservice. And I think for the readers, I think as long as I can put it in context and present it in a fun and creative way, I think that's what's necessary. I don't need to come up with groundbreaking words, but I tend to sometimes make stuff up just for fun.
Okay. Another question, you're on a deserted island. What 5 cookbooks would you want to have with you? Just can't live without them.
Okay, first would be, well, I'm assuming this is a very stacked island then, because if I am needing cookbooks beyond Gilligan's treasure of coconut cream pie,
yes.
I will say I would go with The Joy of Cooking, #1.
Okay.
I would go with Appetite by Nigel Slater as #2. I would probably do, oh my gosh, here's the thing is I collect cookbooks, but I don't, the Modern Priscilla cookbook from 1935,
oh, okay.
Which is a very straightforward, very ingenious little book. I would probably say...
No dessert or pastry ones that come up to mind? No.
You know, honestly, if I was making pastry on a deserted island, I would have Nigella in my back pocket because I think The Domestic Goddess is one of those books that gives you great basics to go from.
Yep.
And that's the one I pull down when I'm looking for a really good icing recipe and a good chocolate cake, a solid chocolate cake. So, what is that, 4? And so one more would be probably the Meat Bible, because I'm thinking I'm going to be spearing some warthogs or something, and I gotta really know what part to cut.
Nice. Then the last question, Stephanie, besides food, are there any other interesting hobbies or things you're interested in that people might be surprised about?
Do you mean my karaoke talent? Or I play on a soccer team, an adult soccer team.
Oh, okay. With
a bunch of the high school buddies who I've played with forever.
Are you the person that's assigned to bring treats and stuff for after the game?
Yeah, no. Well, unless the treats are beer. I am assigned to find the beer location after the game.
Okay.
So that is sort of my role. Other than that, no. I think the only... I mean, I have a lot of interests and stuff. A lot of stuff is with my kids, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, we as a family, we sort of have a food thing going, but really we just try to get as much out of this city as we can. And I think that's the best part of living in these towns, is that you really can wring so many great experiences. We kind of like to be tourists in our own town.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, Stephanie. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.